Well, here we are again, winter fishing. Both of us love our winter fishing. And we've come here today to a river to catch chub and pike. You might actually recognise this place because we have fished here before. This is, of course, the Trout fishery on the Dorset Stour, and we thought long and hard about where to come, didn't we?
Yeah, well, this river's got great potential, and on this show we're after pike and chub, and I don't think there's a better chance than on this river, to be honest.
No, and look how much it's changed as well. All the weeds gone from the summer, the level's up by a couple of feet, it's got a bit of pace, got a bit of colour. It's in perfect winter trim. And it has produced some very big fish.
Yeah, and of course winter tactics are very, very different to summer tactics.
Totally. So we'll be fishing a different way. You're going to be fishing for pike, yep. I'm going to be fishing for chub, and with any luck between us, we're going to catch a nice fish. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I think you're going to get one, mate. I do, honestly. I'm very confident, and I think it'll be a decent one over here.
If the roach are here, we've got a very good chance of pike.
You'll have one, Mick, you'll have one. So, it's river pike and chub next, and we're off to the Dorset Stour. Just to remind you, well, the pike record currently stands at over £46 from Langdegford Reservoir in Wales, and the chub record's an £8 10-ounce fish caught from the River Lee. Now, I'm here in the Natural History Museum. I've got with me Nigel Hewlett, who works for the Environment Agency and the British Rod Court Fish Committee. Interesting thing here, Nigel, not so much talking about these individual records, but if you look at records recently, there are two rivers in this country that really, really, truly stand out. The Dorset Stour and the Great Ouse. Why?
It's a big question, and I think the general answer to that is that the growing of really big fish, and that's where your records are going to come from, is an interaction between the environment that's there and the number of fish, the stock density and genetics of those individual populations, and the life histories they choose as well. In general, what you're looking at is a situation of where the opportunity's there, where the habitat's right, and where there's not too much competition but lots of food, fish will grow big, and that's what's happening in these rivers.
And there's no question that if you are an aspiring specimen hunter, someone with ambitions to break a record, you could do a lot worse than spend all of your time on the Great Ouse and the Dorset Stour, because these two rivers have really got it. Now, Mick and I are off to the Stour now. We're not just fishing for one species. I'm going for my favourite, which is chub, and Mick, well, he's going for his favourite, of course, which is pike. Now then, my opening gambit here for the chub is to try trotting. This is the method that tends to produce the biggest catches of chub here at Trout, and you can see the swim I've got is absolutely perfect. It's a long, steady glide. The fish tend to live right down the bottom of the swim, but if I feed steadily with maggots, with any luck, I'll be able to draw them up into a catchable position. Conditions-wise, well, it's not perfect. We've got a little bit of water on. There's perhaps a little bit more colour than I'd like, but it's certainly worth a go. And on a falling river, as we've got now, then at some point, hopefully, the chub will switch on. Now, in order to catch them, I've basically got to get them out of cover and out into this run, and I'm going to do that by feeding constantly with maggots and just running the float down the swim. And if it works, I'm pretty confident it'll work within the first hour of fishing.
Most of the huge pike that are caught nowadays are coming from still waters, but there are one or two rivers in the country that are capable of producing huge pike. The Dorset Stour is one of them, and that's why we're here today. We definitely know that this stretch of the river has produced a fish of £32 last season, and that fish could be swimming up and down in front of us somewhere. Now, the water in front of me, it's basically quite shallow and streamy, but there's one very, very deep hole against the bank here. And I'm just hedging my bets that if there's a big pike in this section, it's going to be down in this hole. Now, this fish, it's going to be feeding on big chub, big roach. It's going to be taking live prey. We haven't got such baits today, but we've got some very nice dead baits with us, and big pike can get very lazy, especially in midwinter, and they will pick up a dead bait. So it's certainly worth spending a couple of hours in this swim just to see, just to check it out.
Well, it's just as I suspected. I've had a bite within about half a dozen casts down. I don't think it's a particularly big fish, but I was just holding the float back, and the float just literally buried out of sight, and I'm into a fish. It just goes to show that if you get the presentation right, we've got all sorts of possibilities. Now, it is a chub, but not a big one by Trout standards, but cracking start. Just steer it into the net. Sometimes when you see the catches in the papers, you could be forgiven for thinking that Trout chub are born that big. It may not be enormous, but it's absolutely fin perfect. Lovely grey edges to its fins, dark grey. And typical sort of chub size, this would be a typical adult on most rivers. It's a cracking start. Pop it back in the edge. See a few maggots just drifting up there that it's coughed out. Now, with any luck, that's not the only chub in the swim. There may well be some bigger fish in there as well. Well, stick float fishing is actually one of the forgotten arts of fishing. It's one of the real skills that all good anglers should learn. Now, to fish with a stick float effectively, you need the right equipment to start off with. The rod and the reel are what we would term a fairly standard match setup. The line I'm using here is a 3-pound main line and it floats. Now that's important because it helps you to mend the line behind the float. But of course with stick float fishing the most important component is the float itself. Now this is a stick float. It's what we call a wire stem stick because it's got a wire stem. Like all stick floats, it's fished in line with 3 rubbers to attach it to the line, one at the top, one in the middle and one down the bottom. Below that, we've got the working shot. Now you might be wondering, why have I used so many small shots when I could have just used 2 or 3 big ones? Well, the answer is, when you strike, you make less disturbance because the smaller shots offer less resistance to the current. And then below that, I've got just a single dropper shot, a number 8, before you get to the hook, which is a size 16. Now, when you're fishing with shots strung out, the float is more likely to tangle, and most people cast a stick float by holding on to the line just above the bait and then swinging everything out neatly, and then when it hits the water, get the line right behind the float. And to do that, you'll probably find you need to raise the rod tip and just move the rod in a circular motion like this, just to flick the line. To get it to go down the swim, you've got to keep releasing line. You'll notice that my finger is just lifting every now and again to release line from the reel. And what's happening is the bait is lifting, and that can often be a trigger for a fish to grab that bait. What you're trying to do is steer it along the bottom and pop it literally into the mouth of a fish that's sitting there in the current hoovering up maggots. If you get a bite, you trap the line and strike. You haven't got time to close the bail arm. You can do that after you've hooked the fish. So if you can put all of these things together, there's no finer way to catch fish, I'll tell you, it's fantastic. Well, here's another chub. Feels a bit better than the last one. I'm giving it a lot of stick. Very similar size to the last fish. Well, there you go, 2 chub in the first 20 minutes. That's really nice fishing. Just lost one.
I've absolutely got it, I've missed it.
Felt like a decent fish, same place, right down.
Oh, that's fishing for you.
Well, I'm in again. Right out, it's off. Damn.
And I've missed it. That's really done me, that has. I'm gonna put the kettle on before I cut my throat.
It's trotting away, and I've hooked a good fish now. So here it comes. Yeah, gotcha. Perfect winter condition. Really fat fish. Well, I know that this weighs £1.9 pound, so it makes the fish somewhere between 4 1/4 pounds and £4 5 ounces. So that's a really good chub. That's a lovely chub, that one. And the favourite tactic of the chub is to bury itself in the bankside cover. So I've just got to hope that the gear I'm using is up to the task. Well, that's not a bad one either. There's obviously a little pocket of chub hanging down there. On any other river, this would be a really big fish. Believe me, there's a lot of prey fish near me.
Yeah, we've just got to be patient.
Oh, that feels like a good one as well. I might have to go downstream slightly for this. Come on, folks. This feels like a good chub, this one. Oh, it's got solid on me, that has. Oh, he's moving. Now, will that small hook hold? This feels like a very heavy fish, this one. Oh, it's using the current to maximum advantage, putting a lot of strain on the tackle. Now it's a question of just inching the fish in. Oh, it's right opposite me now, that's good. It's coming upstream, nice and steady. Well, I've had a heck of a game with this chub here. It started off by boring into some weeds on the bottom of the river and just dogging it out in the middle. And I couldn't shift it for a while. I thought it was stuck. Here it comes. Gotcha. Oh, that's brilliant. Whew, what a fight. That's a great way to catch chub. And that's another nice fish. Yes, possibly a bit bigger than the last one. That's a beautiful chub. Big, thick-set fish. Look at that. Absolutely magnificent. Well, it doesn't get any better than that. Yeah, beauty. Well, I think that one is going to be pushing £5. It's a big fish. Certainly the sort of stamp of fish that I was hoping to catch here at Trout. So I think we'll weigh that one. I've double-checked it. So we've got to deduct £1 7 ounces from the weight of this chub. Let's have a look. Well, you can see the scales there registering just over £6 7, nearly £6 8. So if you knock £1 7 off that, you've got 5.1 and a bit. And a £5 chub's a blooming good fish. Look how thick set this chub is across the back. That's where all the weight is. It's like a breeze block. Well, I've had a really good day today. It's not been so good for Mick, but in fairness, he stuck around this area so we could kind of fish together and compare notes. It's not a really good pike spot here. It's a little bit shallow, and I think in fairness to him, tomorrow I should return the favour and go upstream where the water's a bit deeper. He's definitely got more chance of a pike. And although there's probably fewer chub up there, you never know, might snare a really big one. I think I'll do a bit of ledgering, but I was really keen to show you some float fishing today. It is a terrific way to catch chub, especially in the winter, and it's worked. I've had a couple of beauties. Can't argue with that.
Most really big pike nowadays are coming from still waters, but there are a few rivers in this country that are capable of producing huge pike, and by huge I'm talking about 30-pounders. The Dorset Stour can and does produce a 30 now and again, and that's why we're here today. I've picked a beautiful little glide to fish. I'm told by the locals there's lots and lots of roach in there, and where you get the roach all shoaled up in the winter, you can be absolutely confident there's going to be pike in there amongst them. Now for bait, I haven't actually got any roach, but I've got what to me is the next best thing, and that's a nice fresh smelt. These smell absolutely beautiful. Bit of a cucumbery smell, but it smells really fresh and appetising. And I've just mounted this little smelt. It's a little sea fish. Mounted it on 2 size 6 trebles. A very, very simple float rig, a float for indication, bite indication. I'm just going to drop it down in the margin where we know the roach shoals are and sit back and wait, but I'm feeling quite confident today.
Well, this is a completely different day, isn't it, to yesterday? We've moved further up beat 2 on Trout to give Mick a better chance of catching a pike. This is much pikier water. The water's steadier, it's deeper, and I think he's in with a really good chance. Now, my tactics are different today. I'm still after chub, but I think here we've got a slight downstream wind, which is not good for float fishing, and I think the feeder's the winning tactic today. So I'm using a maggot feeder with a very long hook link, about 4 feet long. And the reason for that is that the fish often back off the feeder here, especially the big fish. They want the maggots in there, but they're a little bit wary of the swim feeder itself. So I'm going for a really long hook link. And what I'm going to do is sit here and try and build this swim up. Now, I don't delude myself. I don't think I'm going to get instant results. It might take several hours to get a bite, but if I do, this swim's got a really good track record with very big fish. So it's big fish or bust for me today.
I wish the pike were as hungry as that. The nature of river piking is that if you don't get one fairly quick, it's best to move on, so I'm considering now moving a bit further down the river. I'll give it a bit longer anyway though. Oh, at last something's taken my bait. Well, I'm sure it's not the huge pike we're after, but it's a result. And there it is, a long, slim river pike. Next to my dead bait in the jaws of the pike is the last meal he took, which is a little minnow. We've opened the account anyway. Maybe there's something bigger waiting down there for us.
Well, I've plugged away on the feeder for about 3 hours, not a sausage. And maybe having a pellet out there or a boilie hook bait, just sitting and waiting for one big fish to open its mouth. Maybe that's the way to go. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of bites today, so I'm going to change my tactics, altogether different, much larger hook baits, and just sit and wait.
All this area is noted for roach, so there must be pike somewhere. And I think we've just got to keep moving and moving until we drop on one.
Well, because I don't want to overfeed the fish, I'm making up some really small PVA bags here.
I haven't done particularly well today. I don't know whether it's me or the river conditions. So we've got another hour or so, let's see how it goes. And if we don't get the big one we want, we'll try again tomorrow. As you can see, it's absolutely pitch black now and I'm still fishing. If you want to catch a big chub or a big barbel or a big roach on this river, you want to fish just as it's getting dark, and I thought maybe the same applies to the pike, and I came back and had another cast, and in the pitch black I've got one. It's not a huge one, but it's making me realise maybe one of the reasons we haven't caught them is that they are feeding in the dark. Oh, let's have a look at it. Well, there it is, Dorset Stour pike. Well, it hasn't been an easy day for me, but I've learnt a little bit about the water. I've never fished for pike on the Stour before, but I think we'll come back again tomorrow and see if we can use what we've learned to our advantage. Well, this is our last chance to catch a decent pike in our new location, and I'm using the same rigs as I used yesterday. And I think most people are familiar with the floatfish dead bait. It's just a dead bait on the bottom and a float on the surface for bite indication. You might not be so familiar with the paternoster rig used on the other rod. And the reason I use this paternoster rig is to keep the bait off the bottom and fluttering in the current where the pike can see it. And basically it just utilises this float here, which is kept under the water, and it keeps the whole rig in tension and stops the bait getting down to the bottom, and it just flutters nicely in the current. You can use a live bait or a dead bait. Personally, I think a live bait's a better choice, but it works with both. Anyway, I'll see how that one goes. Get that one in the water and see if we can't get a run. Well, I've got my paternoster bait down in the margin here, and we've got something quite exciting happening at the moment. I can see the float under the water, which is keeping the rig tight, and it's going round, and I've seen my fish shoot up to the surface, and there was a big swirl. The pike has tried to grab that roach, and he's actually missed, but I'm sure he'll come back for another tack in a minute. I think something's grabbed it. Yes, it is a pike. You still see the bait in the pike's mouth. Well, that's unusual for a winter fish to jump in the air like that. I'm never tired of catching pike. Anyway, let's take a closer look. This is a particularly beautiful pike. Look at the camouflage on the head of this pike. Look at the mottling on there. It really is a beautiful pike. No, false alarm. There it is. It's great fun, this river piking. Going to get across to my net. Yes, I've got it. Again, not the big one we're after, not the monster that we're expecting from this river, but I just love catching all of them, really. Right, you can see the bait flag on the hook there. Again, another lovely river pike. Look at that with the sun shining on it. Well, we haven't caught the really big one we're after, but it's really good fun catching pike of any size. I could catch these all day long.
Well, this is absolutely amazing. Do you remember what I was saying earlier on about last light? I've sat here all day catching absolutely nothing, and literally just as the light's going, I've had a bite out of the blue, and I must have fished here for 5 or 6 hours with not a sniff, apart from a few minnows, and I've put on a small piece of cheese paste, the tip's flown round, and I found myself into a chub. It's amazing how often that happens. This is a really long lean fish actually, not a typical throop chub at all. It's absolutely enormously long, but there's no depth to it. All right, Mick.
Whatever have you got there?
Well, it's the strangest looking chub I've ever caught. It's the shape of a pike. Its dorsal fin is miles back along its body.
It certainly is.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had a narrow squeak because had this fish been in the normal condition of throop chub, you could be looking at a record here. It's a massive
Yeah, it's a very long fish, and that's a very, very big mouth. Look
It's
at
a
that.
huge head. I reckon
Yeah.
at one time this fish was well over 7 pounds,
Yeah.
Mick, and now, I don't know, it might just make 5.
Yeah,
perhaps.
possibly, yeah. Still, it's nice to end the day on a fish, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah. It's been hard work, but it's often the way, you know, you fish all day for these big chub and you get one right at the end, and that's what we've done today, so I'm going to put this fish back anyway. Well, there he goes. No, I sat here all day. I've had absolutely nothing.
Yeah, let's go and get warmed up, shall we? Come on, Hazy, get the kettle on.
I'm doing it, Brownie, but it's blooming windy, you know. It is winter.
So, is that the only bite you got, all that?
Yep. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Sat there all day. I got
fall, yeah.
one bite just as the light was going. But you know, fishing these places isn't easy. So often when you're going to catch really big fish, it's literally weeks and months and sometimes years of effort. So I think we've done pretty well. You had a few pike.
I mean, I did have pike, but I really worked hard for them, Matt. I felt today that the pike weren't really hunting. I'm pleased with the result anyway.
Yeah, terrific. Well, for me, the cream of the fishing was that float fishing for chub at the start. It really doesn't get any better than that. And for us, well, cup of tea and then back on the road because we've got another species to catch.
Yeah, we certainly have.
Well, our target this time around is sea trout, and we've come now to one of the meccas of sea trout fishing in the world, never mind in the British Isles. We've come to the River Towie here in Wales. This is Tony, he knows a lot about the river. And Tony, why have you brought us here to Nantgaredig Bridge?
This is where all fishermen who want to fish the Towie come to look, Matt. It's our first view of the river. What a view. It's beautiful, isn't it? Fabulous. See the height of the flow, whether the fish are in, we hope. You can see them in the pool here. Smashing spot to view the river. But this is the mecca for big sea trout.
Yeah, but how big though? Because I mean, we won a big one this time.
Look, there are fish in this river well in excess of 20 pounds. Now, I'm no fool, nor are you. Catching them is not easy.
Yeah, yeah.
The water's actually not bad, but we're late into the season, Mick.
Yeah.
June, July is the time for the big fish.
But what about where we're going to fish? Because we're not going to fish here at Nantgaredig, are we?
No, we're not, Matt. We're going to be fishing on Abercothie Estate Fishery, upstream of the bridge, belongs to Sir Edward Dashwood. Very kindly allowed Mick and me to fish. I'm not sure about you, right?
Yeah, I normally get thrown off places like this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Fabulous piece of water. Look, I know there are fish there. Now, we all three know what sea trout are like. They're ephemeral. We catch them if we can at night. It's tricky. We're going to do our best. I think our chances of hooking one are slim at this time of the year, but they're in here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, we ain't going to catch them standing here, are we?
We're not, no, we're not.
Shall we go and have a wander off and
Why not?
get down the river?
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
So, sea trout, well, the record currently stands at a staggering 28 pounds 5 ounces, caught relatively recently in 1992 from the River Test in Hampshire. And I'm here at the Natural History Museum in London. I've got with me Nigel Hewlett, who works for the Environment Agency, also on the British Rod Caught Fish Committee. And actually, you know quite a lot about sea trout, don't you?
Well, a bit, yeah. There's a species I've always had an interest in. The thing that makes a big sea trout, the potential for a big sea trout, is rather simply not getting caught. A bit more to it than that. Sea trout, unlike salmon, when they go up the river and spawn, they actually do generally go back to sea again. And the key to getting big fish is the ones that are what we call multiple spawners or repeat spawners that do it several times. And the key for them is getting up the river to spawn and getting back out to sea using as little energy as they possibly can.
Well, we won't be going to the River Test to catch our sea trout. We're going to one of the great Welsh sewing rivers, the River Towy over on the west coast of Wales, a fabulous place with a terrific history of really big sea trout. Well, I'm here on the river now with keeper Cyril Fox. And Cyril, you've been fishing and guiding people on this bit of water for about, what, 25 years?
25 years I've on this river.
Now, I don't know a lot about sea trout. I've done a little bit of sea trout fishing. Whereabouts should I be looking to fish tonight?
Well, you want plenty of trees for a start, right? Plenty of cover. And this little piece here is one of the best pieces on the beat.
And how tight, Cyril, do we need to get to the trees?
Well, you need to go pretty tight.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you lose one or two flies.
Yeah.
If you don't lose any flies at night, you're not fishing properly. You get me?
Yep.
Right.
So you've got to get right into the trees.
Get it right into the
So where
trees.
would the prime taking spot be in this pool then?
You see that little V there, right? The gap there with no trees. It's quite deep there, right?
Yeah.
That's why this pool is good.
Yeah. So let's just walk down here. I'd be. Oh, there was a fish under that tree there.
Did I tell you? Did I tell you? That's why I want to put your fly right under that.
And he was right in.
Right
wasn't he?
under.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
got me going now.
That's right.
If we sum it all up, then we look at the characteristics of a great sea trout pool.
Yeah.
What would it be like?
Well, obvious. There'll be plenty of trees there, right? Plenty of cover.
Yeah.
Plenty of rocks and plenty of flow as well. If you don't get any flow, that's the end of the pool.
Right. So what is the best sea trout night?
Well, you need dark night and cloud cover. The two things we don't like: mist and the moon.
And we'll probably get both tonight.
Get both tonight, yeah.
Ichty's going to fish with me, Ichty Griffiths. You
Yes,
know him,
that's
don't you?
right. Yeah, I know him.
And
Yeah.
he's a good fisherman.
Very good fisherman.
And
I know him for years.
And I'm appallingly bad.
Well-
Nick's appallingly bad, but we've got Tony Davis
Yes,
as well.
he's another good fisherman as
So,
well.
with a little bit of luck...
Well, we have seen him one fish now already.
If you try and cast with that rod, you'll notice that you can feel the line on the back cast with quite a short line like that.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
That's all you're going to use here. You're not going to use a long line. So try that one now. And as I said, you just tuck your hand in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm
because
making hard work.
You're making slightly hard work. Right. That's better.
Yeah.
And immediately you do that, it turns over a lot
you
better.
can feel when it's right, can't you?
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
that's right. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with that.
That's right. Do it again. And this time, that's right. This time, drop the rod slightly more slowly so that your loop goes out a bit higher. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise what happens is your line drops too close to you.
Yeah,
Have
yeah.
another little go and try and keep this arm of yours tucked in. That's good. That's nice.
Yeah.
And you can feel it pulling off now, can't
it's
you?
fighting to get away, yeah. It feels so much better, so much smoother. Yeah.
When you're fishing at night, the other thing you have to remember is how you're going to pull the line in.
I mean, my idea was to get it under the trees on the far side, or
Yeah.
as far as I can.
Yeah.
With the rod is about 45 degrees. Feel it round in the current until it's almost caught up with the current.
That's right.
And then I was just going to sort of just gently strip it back.
The retrieve that many sea trout fishermen use it's called a figure of 8. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you've come across the figure
Well,
of
I've
8.
heard people say to use it. I can't
Right.
see. What is the advantage of using it?
The advantage of using it is that if you're wading,
Yeah.
you don't have to put your line in the water.
Oh, I see. Is that
You
the
don't
main
get the drag
advantage?
from the
Yeah,
water,
yeah.
and you can just put it back out again.
Yeah.
Plus the fact it's a constant retrieve.
Yeah, I thought the constant speed was
it's a
probably more
constant-
important.
Well, yeah, but if you do it what I call free hand, like that, you can actually kick the fly.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're not damping
yeah, you're actually putting a bit of life into it,
And
really.
then you can
Yeah.
just come up and you can put it back out again.
Yeah.
These are not fish that I certainly don't wait for them to turn. If they're
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
you
yeah.
strike as fast as you
Yeah,
can, and
yeah.
you really don't want to have a bow of slack line there
Yeah,
if you can
yeah,
avoid it.
yeah.
So you want to keep as close as you can to contact.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I don't know if you can do the figure of 8. Can you? Have you tried it?
Well, I've never tried it, but
Right. Now if you come up now, just come up and shoot that with your.
yeah.
You didn't throw the back cast high enough.
No,
Throw
no.
that back cast up again. That's it. Lovely.
Beautiful, yeah.
That's working really well.
I mean, those
Full little
tips are
heads.
going to be invaluable in the middle of the night in the pitch black, aren't they?
You know, these are small things that,
Yeah,
you know,
but they're
we
so
do
important.
naturally.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm very aware that people who haven't done this before, it doesn't matter how much fishing they've done,
Yeah, yeah.
they are little things that, even though we take them for granted, they're very, very important.
Yeah, well, from the other fishing I've done, I can appreciate how these small things make all the difference.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Good boy.
So the way we're going to fish for these sea trout is the definitive way, and that's fly fishing at night, which is quite difficult but extremely challenging and rewarding. And I've been joined now by Tony's here and Dixie Griffiths. Now, one of the great things about sea trout fishing, in my opinion, is the anticipation, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's an aura about this. I mean, you sit on the river just before dark, and this is the time of day when these fish will start to show. You can walk a beat like this in the day and very often see nothing, but it's only at this time of night you start getting a feeling that the fish are there. It's very exciting indeed, actually.
Yeah. Well, I like this waiting part. I mean, how dark does it have to be, Tone, before we
Good question, Matt. I mean, we tend to say to people, you wait and you wait again. You want to go, but you wait until the light is well off the water. Look now, I mean, we'd be too early now. You want it dark. You know what I mean by dark? You want to be able to approach the water and find it difficult, for example, to see the other bank.
Yeah.
It's probably another 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. You have to really wait until it's dark.
Use a bit of common sense and enjoy the whole essence of what you're doing.
Well, for me, this is the most exciting part of the night now. The waiting's over. We've split into two pairs. We're going to be fishing two different pools. I'm going to be fishing with Ichtid, who's going to go first, and I'm going to follow him a few paces behind, mix up fishing with Tony. We've heard a couple of big fish turn over somewhere out there in the blackness, and that's really, really exciting. But I'll tell you, this magic witching hour now, when we're going to go out there into the gloom and start casting these flies, it's just electrifying, it really is. We've really roped in Tony and Ichtid because we feel that we just need to show you one of these big sea trout, one of these suing, and obviously we want to maximise our chances. Did you get one?
Just missed one.
Well, this is the moment that I was waiting for. I just had a big pull out in the dark. A fish just came exploding up out the water, and it feels like a reasonable fish. It's so exciting to hook one of these fish in total blackness. It's been a fantastic fight with the fish just careering up out of the water next to the trees. I nearly lost it at one stage, and I've just gradually walked it up towards the edge of this beach. Ichtid's just behind me, and here it comes now. Oh, it's a nice looking trout as well. This could be the one that we came for. Now I'm going to try and beach this fish. My hands are shaking so much that I'm having real trouble keeping control of myself here. Oh, no, don't get round my leg. There it is. Yes. Look at that. That is absolutely fantastic. I've got Ichtid here, Rick. How big is this, do you think?
He's about 4.5 pounds, I should imagine.
Beautiful fish.
That is.
That is the best sea trout I've caught at night on a fly.
Really?
And
Really?
yeah, and I am so happy.
As they say, you're getting better.
I'm getting better, mate. I'm getting so much better.
That's fantastic.
That is a beautiful
I'm ever
fish.
so pleased. I'm ever so pleased for you.
Oh, it's given me a right beat as well. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that's lovely.
It doesn't get any better than that.
No, it does not, yeah.
To me, is the pinnacle of fishing in this country.
Well, it is something, isn't
I
it?
think
Something very special.
If we just look at the sea trout, you can see it's a salmonoid fish. It's a member of the salmon family. It's got the little adipose fin at the near its tail.
If you notice, the tail there is nearly square. If you got a grilse, which is the young salmon, he'd have a V in his tail. You know,
Yeah,
what I mean? It'd be a pointed tail.
Yeah.
And of course, he's got spots here. Yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
Well, I've not done a lot of sea trout fishing before. I'm quite a novice at this game, but with most fishing that I haven't done before, I can usually pick it up as I go along, but it's been very frustrating this session because last night we only had an hour of darkness, and with sea trout fishing, as soon as the moon comes up and you get that bright light on the water, it's all over, and I didn't really have time to learn as I went along. So as I say, very frustrating, but I've been out today, I've practiced my casting, I've started to look what the fly's doing in the water in the daylight, so I'm more confident in the night. And I'm going into the second night now with a lot more confidence, but it all depends on whether the moon comes up, how much light's on the water. And I've got to say at the moment, it's not looking good at all.
So, Richard, you've been fishing for sea trout for a long time. You've caught, I think it's something like, I don't know, over 40 double-figure sea trout, is that right?
That's right.
That's more than any man could ask for in a lifetime, mate. Tell us a little bit about this fish that the Welsh call the sewin, the sea trout, because it is an amazing fish, isn't it?
Well, we're very lucky in West Wales. We have sea trout, and they're big, because in Cardigan Bay and around the South Wales coast, there's still plenty of food for them. They feed mainly on sprat and sand eel. They're born in the river. The fish come up and they spawn, usually in October time. The main reason it runs to sea is that there's not enough food in our rivers to sustain many brown trout. So therefore they go to sea to do the feeding and they come back to spawn.
Now, there may be people who are watching this programme who fancy a go at sea trout fishing. You've done a lot of it. Just take us through some of the sort of basic tackle that you use. Rods and reels, lines, flies, that sort of thing.
For Welsh sea trout fishing, reservoir kit is a good starter. And that means a rod of anything from 9'6", say, for the bigger rivers, to maybe a 9-foot rod for smaller streams.
What about flies? Because, I mean, there are lots and lots of flies. Flies are legion, aren't they? But what makes a good sea trout fly? Just show us 2 or 3 really good, effective patterns.
Well, for early evening fishing, you know, a standard pattern which works on, I would say, practically every river would be a straightforward black and silver, and very, very simple and easy to tie, which is nice for the beginner, and certainly if somebody wants to come along to fish for sea trout for a week in the year, they can tie those, half a dozen of those up quite quickly. Very, very simple. Sometimes you can put a little bit of twinkle in the wing. You know, I mean, that's up to the individual. There's a bit of twinkle in the wing of that fly.
So last night we were fishing in probably the most difficult conditions, weren't we? Because we had a big moon, we had no cloud cover and mist and stuff. What do you think to tonight?
The moon tonight will be a big moon again. It made it very difficult last night, but they're a fisher. And if they're a fisher, you're always in with a chance. The only time I say you haven't got a chance is when there are no fish here.
And the fish are here?
Absolutely.
All right, well, we'll give it another go. I think Mick's going to have a real good go at it tonight, so
good,
with any luck.
Good.
Fingers crossed, my son.
I'd love to see Mick get a fish.
So would I.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put you in at the top of the pool, if that's okay. Down there, okay? And I would fish it a sort of 45-degree angle.
Yep.
Move down to about there, if that's okay.
That's fine, yeah.
But there's always a chance in this kind of water here.
I'm thinking about technique rather than catching the fish.
Well, that's right. You do go through these phases where
Yeah.
you think, what am I doing it right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters, because as long as you're not really, if you sometimes forget about it a bit, your casting actually improves because you're not as aware. That's not a bad cast.
It's all about making the rod work rather than your arm.
Absolutely, you know,
Yeah.
once you start having to thrash it, you're actually not working the rod. And there probably are one or two fish in here. And normally at this time of night, when they're in runs like this, they will take the fly quite well. Unfortunately, because it's fast water, you sometimes don't hook them so well, but you certainly get a real good, real good pull, you know, when they take.
Matt! Well, I don't know whether Matt can hear me in the mist, but I'm into a sea trout, and it's a most incredible experience. We never thought we'd get one on this bright moonlit night, but I'm into one, mate. It's not a big one, but it's the first one I've caught on the fly.
You got one, Mick?
Yeah, I'm into one, Matt.
Good lad.
Oh, here it comes.
It's a good fish, Mick. Now, you're going to have to walk it in towards the bank, I think, mate.
Yeah.
We're about an hour before dawn now, I'd say. And we almost packed in, didn't we?
Yeah. Whoa. Well, I honestly didn't think I was going to get one, but I just had a pluck just before this. Can you hand it out, Matt?
Yeah, I'm going to try and grab it for you, mate.
A little bit ungraceful, but I've got one.
That's fantastic.
Well done, mate.
First one.
Yeah, all those hours and hours of frustration and struggling in the darkness, and getting stuck on the far bank and getting stuck on rocks, and I finally got one.
Well, look, I've got the fly out.
Yeah.
There's your fish. That one will probably go back, you know.
Fantastic, Mick.
Well, as you can see, I'm a very, very happy man. My first sea trout on the fly in the middle of the night on the River Towie. What more could a man ask for?
Right, Mick, I'm going to push this fish into deeper water because it's going to swim off this one. You can see how strong its tail is now.
Yeah.
There she goes, there she goes, there she goes. Hey, Brownie. Well, I'll tell you what, we came down here, down to the Towie, which is the greatest sea trout river in Britain as far as I'm concerned, in less than ideal conditions. We've had moon and mist to contend with.
Yeah.
We've caught a couple of belting fish.
Yeah.
And to be honest, who cares about the record? That's a good achievement.
Yeah.
To catch a sea trout on a fly at night, fishing doesn't get any better than that.
No.
So, Tone,
No.
Great, Matt.
we are indebted to you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks,
I
mate.
really enjoyed it. It's been great
And
company.
Twix did as well.
And this man, fantastic. Great.
Okay, mate, put it there.
Well,
Let's go and get a cup of tea.
cup of tea and maybe another hour's fishing, Matt.
Me and Mick Brown are on the road again, and you find us here at the Summer Pit in Yateley. Now, you might be wondering, what are we doing sitting out here in the dark, staring at a tiny pinprick of light? And the answer is, we're fishing for really big Crucian carp. And when I say big, I mean big, don't I, Mick?
Yeah, there's some really big fish in here. There's a fish being caught this season that's actually trying to be ratified for the record.
I'm here fishing now in the dark because I know that some of these big Crucian carp are being caught at night.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You're not going to, are you?
No, I mean, I've got a slightly different tactic. I mean, fishing through the night with a float, it's going to tire me out. I've baited a swim on the other side, and I'm going to be there at daybreak, and I really want to concentrate. I want to be 100%.
These Crucians have had a fair old hammering through the early part of the season.
Yeah.
Couple that with the high temperatures, the extremely bright sunshine, all of it adds up, I think, to almost impossible fishing.
Yeah.
Almost impossible, but
Well,
not...
yeah, we've made all the excuses now, so...
OK.
Anyway, I'm going to put a bit more bait in my swim. I'm going to get some sleep, and I'll see you in the morning, mate.
OK, mate. Well, I'll give it an hour and then...
All right, well, if you get one, give us a shout.
All right.
Good luck.
It's very effective fishing in the dark because lots of fish feed in low light. So, Crucian carp, well, the record currently stands at £4 9 ounces. It was caught by Martin Bowler at Yateley. And here I am in the Natural History Museum in London. I've got with me Nigel Hewlett. Nigel works for the Environment Agency, but he's also a member of the British Rod Caught Fish Committee. The Crucian carp, Nigel, I know that this is one that really causes you headaches, isn't it? Why?
Absolutely, Matt. There's no other species that we get in photographs of them and spend so long scrutinising. And the reason is that Crucian carp hybridise extremely easily, both with carp and with wild goldfish or feral goldfish. And the results are fish that look terribly similar to Crucian carp.
So how do you tell the differences?
It's all down to counts of scales on the lateral line, to the position of fins, to body shape, to colour, and a host of things we have to look at.
So are there certain waters where you will just almost accept the record as being caught from, if it's the right weight, obviously, and others where you'd be a lot more cautious?
No, we put every single claim through the same level of scrutiny. We have to be absolutely sure that when we say it's Crucian...
Does that mean submitting the body of the fish?
Absolutely not. As long as it's well photographed and the fins can be seen, the good quality photographs, we can do it from a photograph.
Well, when you're going to try and catch a record, there's only one place to go to, and that's where the record came from. All the forms suggested that Mick and I should head off to Yateley, so we did, and to the summer pit. Now, if you've never done it before, fishing in the dark can be quite an unnerving experience. You hear all sorts of sounds at night. You hear things like foxes and birds and many, many animals that you don't see during the daylight become active at night. And they do make strange shuffling and scuffling and barking sounds. But once you get used to that, it really is great fun, particularly in the summer. Some of my biggest fish have been caught while night fishing, and it doesn't unnerve me at all anymore. But what I'm trying to do is to avoid shining any light directly onto the water, so I've got a small head torch here, which I use for baiting up only. When I'm actually fishing, I found that the best thing to do is to allow your sight and the rest of your senses to actually acclimatise to the darkness gradually. And then once you become familiar with it, you'll be amazed how much you can actually see without the light of a torch. Use the torch for the baiting up, but certainly keep it off the water. Now, I'm using a night float here. It's a little isotope I've attached to the tip of the float, and it's like a little beacon sitting out there, a pinprick of light. If I get a bite off a Crucian carp, it'll literally just disappear under the surface and go out. And that will be absolutely magic if it happens.
Well, I didn't get a bad night's sleep on the bed chair, but 5 o'clock came round and that urge to cast in just got me. Luckily, I'd made the rod up the night before, got my shot in just right, and instantly I was getting bites. Not the Crucians we were after, but rudd. And I just took one after another. And this has gone on now till 7 o'clock. The sun's up, still haven't had a Crucian, but going to keep trying. Well, Crucians will take quite a wide variety of baits. They like worms, maggots, sweet cornbread, you name it, they'll eat it, but they soon wise up to baits. So I've been asking around, and one bait they haven't seen a lot of is luncheon meat, so I'm going to concentrate on that today. I know they like it on other waters. What I've tried to do is concentrate my bait in a small area, and I've picked a point just off that first little bush that's sticking out to my right, and I've already put a handful or two of bait in there, and I've got the Crucians fizzing away. So I'm just very, very carefully now place my float onto them. absolutely spot on. I've got the float right in the middle of the bubbles and the bait's just sinking slowly now in amongst the fish. You'll hardly see the float tip. I've got it set so delicately because these Crucians are really, really finicky biters.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think that this looks like a classic Crucian swim. You've got all these lovely weeds behind me, and on a boiling hot day like this, when it's so hot, it's so intensely bright, these fish are going to want cover and shade, and we've got it in spades here. I think the best way to fish this swim is with a pole. Now, normally a pole is used for match fishing, it's used for commercial type waters, but there is no finer way to present a bait delicately, and I'm told that the Crucian carp here are very, very delicate feeders. That's one of the hallmarks of the species, isn't it? So I think the pole would be a good approach, and I'm going to start off fishing the pole, concentrate hard, and we'll see what happens.
I've got fish bobbling down there.
This is fluorocarbon line. It's got a refractive index similar to that of water, so theoretically it should be invisible. I'm going to use a fairly small hook. So this is the plummet I'm going to be using. I've set this float at about 5 feet deep.
Oh, yes. Well, I don't usually object to catching a few fish, but these rod are becoming a blooming nuisance. Go on, you. I hope a pike eats you.
I've got a feeling it's about 6 feet deep here where I'm going to fish. The great thing about the pole is you can plumb the depth really precisely. Let's just lower it in and see what we've got in front of us. I'm about 2 feet over depth.
Well, it's been very, very frustrating. There's so much scum coming across the surface. The only thing I've been able to do is fish my bait right under the rod tip, have the rod high in the air and have the line coming straight down to it, very much like pole fishing. I'm getting a much better presentation now, so let's see what happens with that. The bites are going to be so delicate from these Crucians.
Well, I've got a real problem now because I've just hooked a Crucian and it's dived straight into the tree. It's my own fault. I didn't get the rod down fast enough to stop the fish getting in there. I'm going to have to just pull slowly and hope that the fish is still on.
These fish have been fished for so much, they know all the little tricks.
I'll just take the elastic on the pole now. That's really, really solid. Remain calm and try not to throw the pole into the water.
Well, I'm into a Crucian, there's no doubt about that. It's not one of them little rudd this time, but it's taking me into this weed right under my feet. I'm going to have a bit of... Oh, I thought I'd lost it for a minute. I've got down to quite a light hook link, so I've got to be really careful with this one. I just don't want that little hook to pull out. Here it comes. I'm going to get him while I can. After all that frustration, I finally got one. I really didn't think I was going to get one with all the problems I've got with these floating leaves and weed. Well, there it is. We've got a Crucian. Not a huge one, but it's probably a couple of pounds, and in my book, that's a good fish. When you think the record's well over £4, we've got a long way to go. How strong little fish. Well, I'm off the mark. I'm just wondering how Matt's getting on over there.
Well, here we go. It's the middle of a baking hot day. Absolutely incredible heat. And I've just placed the float into a little patch of bubbles that I saw off the edge of that tree, and it just gave the slightest dip. And I lifted and I've got a fish on, and I'm pretty sure it's a Crucian carp. I'm trying to keep above the fish now. It's made a dash to the tree. Oh, it's going again. I'm trying to let the elastic in the pole do the work. Oh yeah, that's a nice Crucian. Yes, I've got ya. Woohoo! Fabulous. What about that? Well, it's not a record breaker, but it's not a bad one. That's a good Crucian carp by anybody's standards, and tiniest little bite, classic Crucian carp stuff. And there you go. Now, the Crucian carp, as you can see, is just like a little dinner plate. Fantastic looking thing. It's got no barbules like an ordinary carp. Altogether a very distinctive fish. Well, we know that the official record at the moment stands at 4 pounds 8 ounces. This fish is nowhere near that big. There is a fish currently up for ratification at 4 pounds 9 from this lake, actually. But I'm going to weigh this one anyway, just to get a feel for the size. It's certainly well over 2 pounds, probably, I would think, a good 2.5, maybe even 2 3/4. So it's worth weighing. It's a specimen Crucian, all right. Just pop him in the sling. There we go. 2 pounds 3 ounces I make that. About half the record, but that's a specimen Crucian, definitely. It's a good fish. Well, today has got a sense of ridiculous about it. This is forecast to be the hottest day on record ever. And here we are fishing for Crucian carp. But what I'm going to do is fish in bursts. Fish for maybe 15-20 minutes, take a break, just to keep my concentration going, because I've shotted the float right down for the bite sensitivity, and I need to keep my wits about me, I think. The great thing about the pole is that when I am fishing, I'm fishing really accurately. I can lower the bait right next to the tree if I want to. It's a very, very accurate way of fishing. It's a little bit cumbersome fishing a pole if you've never done it before, because it's a lot longer than a rod and heavier. But the presentation you get, oh, there's a fish now, got one on. Oh, the elastic stretching there. Now, the thing with the pole is you've got no reel to give line, so you have to allow the elastic that runs through the centre of the pole to do its work. The most important thing is not to do anything too quickly. Just take your time and allow the fish to plough around with the elastic just taking all of the sting out of the fight. And now I've got it on a short line and I can reach for the landing net. Oh, that's a lovely looking Crucian carp, that one. Look how deep bodied the fish is. It's almost like a big old-fashioned golden plate. And this one's a real old warrior. I don't know whether you can see, but it looks as if he's blind in one eye. That is a superb Crucian carp, classic specimen. And this one I think is bigger than the first fish I caught. I'm going to weigh this one too, but this one's getting up towards 3 pounds, I think. And who said I couldn't fish a pole? So everything's ready. There we go. 2 pounds 12 ounces. That's a really nice Crucian carp. I've come to a bit of a tactical decision. This finicky feeding behaviour is classic Crucian carp stuff, and that's what Mick's experiencing. He's getting loads of fizzing in the swim, but he can't either get bites or hit the bites. Now, I'm not getting so much activity in my swim, but because of what I believe to be the superior presentation of the pole, I'm actually connecting with the bites when I get them. So I think what I'll do is slip this fish back and then take my pole and my bait round to Mick's swim, and we're going to try fishing the pole in there just to see whether it makes any difference. It may not, but it's worth a go. Fizz of bubbles around my float.
We've got to keep going though, man, because every bite you get, it could be the record breaker.
Well, I lost a fish earlier on. I was absolutely gutted. You just don't know, do you? Well, there are a few differences between my approach and Mick's approach. I mean, first of all, mine's miles better, but specifically, I'm using a ground bait, whereas Mick's using liquidised bread. Now, this ground bait I'm using is very soft, and it's made up of 2 different ground bait mixes. I've got a fish meal here and something called Ringer's mix, which is basically used on commercial carp fisheries. Both have got a nice fishy smell, and what you end up with is a ground bait you can make up fairly damp, and it forms a very fine textured crumb which has got a very distinctive fishy smell, and when it breaks down in the water it forms a very fine carpet. It's brilliant at attracting Crucian carp into the swim. If there is a drawback, the problem is that the fish sometimes become preoccupied on feeding on these tiny little food particles here, and they won't take your hook bait. So there's always a dilemma. Do I put it in and pull the fish into the swim, or do I leave it out? Personally, I've been using it because I've found that the fish are reluctant to leave the cover unless I put some of this stuff out there. It is a very, very good mix, but Mick, you're using a more traditional ground bait, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm using the liquidised bread, and basically it's what it says. It's breadcrumb that's been liquidised. All you do is take the crust off a loaf of bread, break up all the crumb, put it in the liquidizer and just work it until it comes out into this sort of fine, flaky texture. And it's a very versatile bait. You can do so many things with it. You can squeeze it into very soft balls, or you can squeeze it into a really tight ball like this, throw it out, it'll sink to the bottom, and as it hits the bottom, it'll explode. And just cover the bottom with a nice carpet of bread, and if you're fishing flake or the bread punch on top of it, it's really effective. It hasn't worked this time. All the bread's produced is rod. We haven't got the Crucians we were after, but it was worth trying. Well, this evening's session is over and we've had a nice flurry of fish towards the end. Some nice 2-pounders again, not the 3-pounder that we're looking for, and certainly not the record fish we're looking for. But it's been great sport and quite challenging, really. After dark, I'm going to try bolt rigging, using carp tactics, proper carp tactics, but with a lighter setup. You never know, that might work. We've still got time to do it. Well, the chances of catching a record Crucian carp are fast fading away, but I'm going to give it everything now. I'm going to fish through the night with that bolt rig. And even though I'm not fishing, I'm going to be asleep, the rod will be fishing. But as soon as that alarm goes off, believe me, I'll be down there playing the fish. Oh well, good night all.
I've decided to have another go with the night float that I tried last night because there's been quite a lot of activity in the swim at dusk. What I've done differently this time though is I've dotted the float right down, so I'm looking at a tiny, tiny pinprick of light on the surface, and I'm hoping that that extra sensitivity will bring me a fish or two. Well, I've got a fish on in the dark at last, and I thought I might get one in the end. It just slid away, and I'm playing a Crucian carp. Oh, he's going for that tree. I don't want him in there. It's really strange seeing the isotope whipping around in the water at night. I'll try and get it in fairly quick because there's all sorts of snags here. Come on, baby. Gotcha. Because I knew my crazy method would work. And there's the proof. A Crucian. Beautiful Crucian, actually, caught well after dark. Lovely looking fish, isn't it? I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unhook the carp, put him back, and I'm going to get a few hours sleep and have a real good go at this in the morning because it'll be a last chance to do some Crucian fishing, and I'm optimistic maybe we'll get one or two more, but that's a great result, isn't it? There he goes. Great, time for bed, I think. While I'm here, it might be worth talking a little bit about Crucian baits and presentation. Most of the fish in this pit traditionally over the years have been caught on sweet corn and bread hook baits, so I tried to come up with a few alternatives, and the main bait I've been using, as you can probably see here, is tiny cubes of luncheon meat. And what I've been doing is plumbing the depth and having the bait so it literally just touches the bottom. I've got a group of shots about 12 inches up from the hook bait, and they're there basically to get the bait down quickly in the water. I use small shots so I get less tangles on the pole. What about other baits? Well, in addition to the ground bait, I'm feeding these small pellets. These are mini betaine pellets, and they're absolutely perfect for Crucians. You put those in the water, they're full of protein and fish really love eating them. And as they're in the water for a period of time, they soften and start to swell up. So that's my main feed bait. And then I've got a couple of scatter baits here. I scattered just a few of these over the top and used one of these baits on the hook. I did start off using corn, but I've mainly gravitated now to using this luncheon meat, which I've cut into tiny cubes. Perfect for a size 14 or size 16 hook, and perfect for the Crucian carp, which tend to like a small bait.
Oh, this one isn't a rod. This one's not a rod. In fact, it's a Crucian. Oh, and it's off. Oh, I can't bring this one up. I've only got a light hook link on. Let's see if I can turn it from the tree. Oh, this one's staying deep, not like the others, which were... Oh, there it is, there it is. It is a good fish, actually. This could be the one I'm after. Oh, it's in. And it's not a bad one. God, well, if that's not £3, it's not far off. Oh, God. Oh, just take a look at that. Well, this is a proper Crucian carp. This is certainly the biggest one I've ever caught, the biggest one I've ever seen, in fact. Just how deep it is and look how thick across the back it is. Oh, this is a fabulous fish. I am so pleased with it, as you can probably tell.
Well, this is it, Mick. The moment of truth. You don't want to look, do you?
Well, I do and I don't.
OK. Well, it actually weighs £3, 1.5 ounces.
Yes. Oh, thanks.
Well done, son.
Good team effort.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Well, you've done it, Brownie.
Yeah, well,
obviously, we need to get this fish back.
Yeah.
And while you do that, I will hand you the fish in the sack.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Fantastic effort. We've come here to Yateley, which is the home of the British Crucian record, and we've done it. We've shown you Crucian fishing in all its forms. We've had all of that awkward feeding, not being able to get a bite, amending our tactics, catching a few fish, fishing at night. You've seen Crucian fishing perfectly, I think, perfectly illustrated, and it's been an absolute blast, capped off by a superb effort by Mick Brown.
Yeah.
Well done, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Well done.
I'm just lost for words.
But for us, there's no time to get complacent because we're in a bit of a specimen fish hunt. So now it's back on the road and on to the next venue. So I guess we'll see you next time.